Alrighty, we'll get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the How to Pick a Pharmacy to Purchase Lessons from a Successful Pharmacy Owner webinar. My name is Will Brown. I'm a partner and pharmacy broker here at AP Group. I'm joined today by special guest Simon Rudderham. Simon's a pharmacy owner, experienced pharmacy owner, and he's the founder of Change Pharma. Thanks very much for joining us today, Simon.
No worries.
So we'll be tapping into Simon's infinite wealth of wisdom and knowledge in all things pharmacy ownership today, which is awesome. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we record today. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Okay, so I'll just do a quick run through of today's agenda. So we'll do a quick intro to Simon to kick things off. We'll look at some key considerations for when you're assessing a pharmacy opportunity or listing. We'll look at Simon's first store and how he got into that. His first pharmacy in Frankston, Heather Hill Road Pharmacy. We'll look a bit at how that deal came about and what the deal structure was like. Then we'll talk quickly about some of the next business ventures that Simon got into and how they came about. And then we'll do a bit of a recap on the key lessons that Simon's learned along the way, key lessons and advice. Then we'll talk a little bit about his new business, Change Pharma, that he's currently running. And then we'll do a quick Q&A at the end. We'll try and answer some questions depending on how much time we've got. All right, let's get into it. So, Simon, we'll start off with a bit of a background on yourself. What were you doing before you bought your first pharmacy?
Registered in early 2003, came back to Melbourne. I did my internship in New South Wales. I was working for a pretty large pharmacy group that kept buying more and more pharmacies as they grew through grew through the roof rather. Managed them pretty early on. Got to have an appreciation for how much money was sort of flying into the business and how much money they would have been making, although at the time I probably didn't have as good a appreciation for what the costs were as well. That was sort of when I decided that I really wanted to get into ownership early. Had a chat with them. They said, go away for 5 years and live your life and then come back and see us. And I didn't want to wait that long. So I started looking to see what other opportunities there were around.
Yeah, okay. So pretty early in your pharmacy career, you realized that you wanted to get into ownership. What gave you the confidence to take that first step and actually pursue an opportunity?
I guess the management experience I was getting, that I was actually able to, on a larger scale, manage people, manage dispensaries and manage processes. So I got pretty self-confident pretty quickly through that. So yeah.
So you clearly had a bit of a knack for it, and you were keen to get in right away, really.
Yeah, look, I was probably overconfident as you are in your 20s, but I think I did okay out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's worked out over the long run. So, look, there's obviously a lot that goes into assessing a pharmacy opportunity, and we recommend that our buyers, especially inexperienced buyers, research all of these topics that you're going to touch on. But what are some of the key things that prospective buyers should look into when they're reviewing a listing that they come across?
Yeah, the obvious one is the business performance, looking at the P&Ls and having an understanding of the data. I'll touch on that briefly, but that's something you really need to be across. But the numbers are the numbers; they're not the whole story. So you've got to remember that when you're selecting a pharmacy to purchase. For me, I think foot traffic is one of the key indicators. You need to make sure that the pharmacy is co-located with something that people are wanting to go to, whether it's a supermarket, doctor's surgery, post office, top-notch bakery, any and all of the above. There's got to be people walking past the pharmacy to walk into the pharmacy. So you look at the surrounding area. What's going to be happening in the future? Is there going to be 180 apartments being built 3 minutes around the corner? Is there going to be a couple of acres dedicated to aged living place right on your doorstep where the bus will go right past. Um, what what's uh, what's in your future by what's happening in the surrounding areas. Stock. One of the things I like to check out is does the stock mix make sense for the area that it's in? Do they have dusty old shelves of stuff that obviously no one's touched for 12 months, still taking up 2 bays? What can you put there instead? Is there a baby section in the most geriatric of suburbs? You've got to make sure that what they've got makes sense, and know what levers you can pull in that department to get a better outcome. Um, and competition, seeing what's around, knowing where the big discounters are. Um, so big discounters aren't a hard no, but you need to be aware of them. So if you've got one of the big yellow boxes 2 kilometres away, you're not likely to get one closer unless you've got a really high dense area. So you can take that into an account. So yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I think that's a great overview of some of the key things that are really important to look at. As I touched on before, inexperienced buyers should really get familiar with these subjects and go into detail in the research
Mm.
with all of those items. But that's a great overview. All right, so the first pharmacy that you got into was Heather Hill Road Pharmacy in Frankston, which is in Bayside, outskirts of Melbourne in Victoria. What got you interested in that store?
Came across my business partner's desk, who was someone I'd done some work with in uni holidays. Um, and he basically approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this one. Do you want to have a look at it? It's probably got some potential. Go and have a squeeze. The numbers don't look flash, but go and have a look at it," because he'd done that and wanted to get my opinion on it as well. Um, so thinking about the key numbers, I think it was turning over 600K. Um, and at that time, anything that wasn't turning over $1 million wasn't very high on the selling list. Anything over $1 million was being snapped up real quick. Anything under that was a bit of a slow burn. Whereas now, I reckon it's probably you've got a pretty equal mix of everything at the moment, don't you, Will?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's interesting you say that because, yeah, we sell a wide range of different pharmacies, all shapes and sizes, and there's usually pretty competitive amount of buyers for all of them in general. Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are interested in sort of stores with potential, fixer-upper, if you like, stores like
Yeah,
this. So, yeah, that's interesting that at this point there actually wasn't too much interest in stores that need a bit of love like this one.
yeah. So it was doing 43 scripts a day. It was 120 square meters. The stock for the stock count allowable figure was 30K. It came in at about 26, so it was what was pretty sparsely
Yeah.
populated with stock. So yeah, a lot of levers that we could pull straight away. Like half the shop was these really weird gifts. I'm not very good at gift buying, but whoever was doing that, I think, was worse. But so we knew that if we actually turned into more of a pharmacy, um, we'd have some success in the area.
Yeah, so it was really something that you saw a lot of growth in. You could
Yeah,
see, you could see clear pathways to get that growth. So that's what kind of got you interested, I guess.
yeah. When we did the site visit, there were a bunch of people, parking their car and leaving. The car park on the stripper shops was frequently full, but had pretty high turnover. People just walking past the pharmacy, they weren't actually going in. So there had to be a reason, and we reckon we could sort that out. Um, about I think 600 or 700 meters away, there was a pharmacy turning over $5 million. So there was business there,
Mm.
but it just wasn't happening at that store.
Yeah, yeah. So you could see the foot traffic was in the area. It was just about finding the right plan to capture it. Okay, and
Mm.
so with the negotiation process with the vendor at the time, what was that like? Was it difficult to secure the pharmacy? Was it much of a process?
Um, he was the old owner was pretty stubborn and had the number that he absolutely wanted, which wasn't wasn't ridiculous. It was over bank valuation, but given what we knew we could do with it, we were prepared to pay that number without too much hesitation. Um, so yeah, it wasn't too keenly sought after, as I mentioned, because it was the sub 1 million turnover. I think there was a little bit of competition, but they all wanted to have their win on the number, and we just paid what he wanted, knowing that there would be an opportunity lost if we didn't. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting. You touched on
sometimes you
it
just have to.
before.
Yeah,
Sorry, Simon, you touched on before how these kind of opportunities weren't necessarily highly sought after, which is quite different from today. It's
mm,
generally speaking, especially in metro areas like Melbourne or Sydney, it's generally pretty competitive for
mm-hmm.
even just approval numbers, when we get them.
Yep,
But I guess one thing that's more positive now from a perspective of prospective buyers is that the access to data now, I imagine, has come quite a long way.
yeah,
People who are members of ours will know that you can log in immediately and review the script analysis. We share an indicative bank valuation with our listings. You can do a 3D tour. So I think buyers now at least have the benefit, even though it is quite competitive, they at least have good resources to make a decision relatively quickly on a listing.
yeah, absolutely. And it was completely different. Like this store didn't even have a point of sale system. It was the old ticker tape out of the register. So, it was very hard to know exactly what was going on.
Yeah, so pretty limited reports compared to what you get
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And how about getting a loan? I assumed you needed finance. You needed to get a loan
Yeah,
to
no,
purchase.
we did. Very different realm of finance. I think our loan approval took 2 hours, and that was mostly via phone. Those conditions don't exist anymore for better or for worse. It probably would take 2 weeks to get the same thing nowadays. But I guess, and I'll go into it probably a bit later on, but the importance of getting across your finance early, even before you're actually looking at a store, is very important, so that you know what your lending can do. And I know AP Group has a indicative lending
Yeah.
tool that they
Yeah,
can.
we've got a finance team, an internal finance brokerage, so we can help people get finance for pharmacy purchases. They specialize in pharmacy. They also do home loans and things like that as well. And they essentially talk to all the banks, and they've got relationships with all the key people in the health teams at the major banks. And they basically, canvass the market and get the best possible deal for the client. So yeah, especially now when banks are applying a lot more scrutiny. It'd be awesome if it was just like back in the day when Simon bought this store and we could get approval in a couple of hours. But yeah, they look a lot more carefully at the prospective buyer and what their circumstances are. So it's having that specialized pharmacy broker in your corner is super valuable, and it's a much more longer process as well. Yeah, it's more like a month minimum really in terms of by the time you've put together your application, got formal approval from the bank that you end up going with. So yeah, it's a relatively long process and it's a bit more involved now, but yeah, having a pharmacy specialist broker will make it a lot easier for you. And what kind of deal structure did you land on? So it sounded like there was probably a finance condition, probably a due diligence
Yeah,
condition.
there was a finance condition. There was a condition about getting a longer lease, because I think it only had about 3.5 years left, maybe 5. And the banks really like a longer lease, so that's something you need to take into consideration. Due diligence, making sure that the numbers were right, was in there. I don't think we spent too much time on it, because we got the vibe that we could do plenty more with it. So we weren't going to nickel and dime over small details, when we knew what was coming ahead. So yeah,
Fair enough. All right, so you took ownership of the store. You were the working partner, I believe. What did you
yep.
do in the early stages to try to grow the store?
Just basically tried to get the basics right. So it was doing 43 scripts a day, which meant there was a heck of a lot of downtime to think about what we were doing. Pretty much tried to bring in some extra stock of the pharmacy based stuff. So we make sure that we weren't going to run out of things like kids Panadol or Panamax or the basics, or your basic script lines. But with a lot of the downtime, I had my beautifully pressed Ben Casey on, and I was standing out the front, um, having chats with people as they were walking past, because there was plenty of foot traffic. Introducing myself, there was an under new management sign put on the front window, so people had questions about who I was and what I was doing there, and where's the other fella and that sort of thing. And then I'd often escort them in with their scripts and do them, or they'd be back later and get their scripts off file from wherever else and bring them to me. So yeah,
So it's mainly
um,
about engaging,
yeah,
engaging with the local community, being
just
present in the business, and just trying to build those relationships. Bit of old school marketing, being
yeah,
out the front.
just talking to people. And if you buy a very busy business, you may not have the opportunity to do that as much. But in this case, it was just a case of being known, being accessible, and people following as a
And how did
result.
those strategies you implemented, pretty basic stuff, but how did that work?
Well, by I think month 3 or 4, we're up to 75 scripts a day, so it came pretty quickly. Um, we were considering financing a refit 18 months in. I think after 6 months, we just pulled the um, press go on that so that we could get that up and running, and it just kept growing and growing from there. So, yeah.
That's great. Was there anything you did that you implemented that didn't necessarily work out?
Yeah, so one of the with the range and size of the gifts, we actually got rid of all of them and tried to make it a more pharmacy thing, and got a bit of backlash from those in the local community. Usually they got a tongue lashing from the 7-year-old women of Frankston who didn't really have anywhere else to buy gifts for their grandkids. So we ended up bringing back a smaller range of that and just sort of kept tabs on it to make sure it didn't grow and expand like it was under the previous owner. But yeah, that you're going to make some mistakes along the way. It's important to listen to what the community wants and what you're able to provide.
Yeah, I think
So
that's really key. If you can make a decision, and if it was the wrong one, and you listen to the community, there's no reason why you can't go back and adjust.
yeah.
I think it's a good lesson for people out there. Okay, so you owned Heather Hill Road Pharmacy for a few years, I assume, and what did it get to in terms of sales or key numbers at its peak, and what brought about the sale?
So the turnover got to 2.4, um, and we'd grown significantly in terms of front of shop staff and dispense techs, but it was pretty much getting to the stage where it was going to need a second pharmacist in there as well. And it was, do we take that leap? This is before services and everything like that were on the go. Do we take that leap and bear that cost with the growth, or do we just pop it out to market and see what we can get for it? And we liked what someone offered and decided to take it. So yeah.
Fair enough. Um, and what was the next opportunity like that you came across? Was it similar?
It was similar in that it was a bit messy. Very fortunate with business partner I was with at the time and a bit of a mentor drilled into me pretty early on that where there's mess, there's money. Um, but this was a medical centre that had 8 doctors, rooms for 8 doctors. Only had 3 operating, and I don't think they were all full-time equivalents either. But there was a position to be able to relocate within 500 metres of that into a very busy shopping strip. There were surrounding pharmacies as well, but by moving it from an 80 square metre medical centre pharmacy into the street, we were able to um, uh, double the script numbers in a larger shop and get a lot more OTC and beauty trade because it was that sort of area. So yeah, that was what we were able to do next. So another fixer upper, but under different circumstances.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And you ended up owning 8 pharmacies, I think, across Victoria and New South Wales over the journey. Were they always with partners? You always have that working partner
Yeah, there
relation.
was there was always a working partner within the store, and we found that important because you could always just pick up the phone when you saw something going a little bit awry and go, what's with these numbers? What's going on? Your scripts were down X, Y, Z, and you had someone who always had their finger on the pulse because they were there. So that was pretty key for us. Um, what I know I didn't get right is partnership agreements that we had back in the day were about 3/4 of a page. Legal teams are absolutely horrified when I say that, and having my time over, I absolutely would get something a lot more solid than that and probably go to professionals. Just So, I mean, we were very lucky with the business partners that we had. We were pretty upfront about what we wanted out of it, what they wanted out of it. But really, nowadays, you've got to make sure that it's in black and white. What happens if your life changes? What's the process? Buying out a partner, what does that look like? That sort of thing. Very, very important that you do that. And there are some good legal teams out there that can help with that. I know AP Group's got someone that helps with that, I believe, Will.
Yeah, yeah, we've definitely got a pharmacy specialist legal team that can help with all types of things like partnership agreements. As you touched on, no matter how close you are with the person you go into partnership with, you want to have a very clear structure of, what happens if things change. Someone might have a baby or whatever, or want to get out for whatever reason. So, a good partnership agreement that is detailed and solid, and that you're both aware of and agree to, is really important, just for those
Yeah,
times when things happen. So I think that's good advice. You mentioned that your first two stores were both kind of fixer-uppers,
yeah.
kind of quick growth, cheaper options, but for quick growth with a growth plan. Did you stick to that acquisition strategy, or did you invest in some different pharmacies over the years?
Definitely invested in some different ones. That sort of that well dried up a little bit in terms of the prices of the fixer uppers went up and up, and the returns were a bit shakier. So it was harder to proceed with some of those. But yeah, we basically it doesn't really matter every pharmacy can be a fixer upper. There's always levers you can pull to improve value, and I guess having a look and seeing what's there will help you do with that growth and what you can do with it.
Yeah. So even more established businesses that have
Yeah.
higher turnover and are more profitable, you've still got to have that growth plan.
Hmm.
And that growth might be a bit slower, but it's still key to work
Yeah.
out what you're going to do with them and what it's going to look like in year two,
Slow,
three, four, five.
yeah, slow and steady is still very good because if it's declining, it'll be slow and steady on the way back. You'd hope. So it's just a matter of having a plan for how you're going to grow.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, yeah, look, I think we could talk a lot about that stuff, and we've got limited time. So if you, again, you could probably have 10 points here,
Mhm.
Simon, of all the things you've learned along the way. But if you had to condense them into a few key learnings, if you like, or key takeaways, can you, yeah, take us through a few of those just to give people some insights?
Yeah, look, the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. You need to be able to interrogate and see um, what are the figures telling you. But as I said, the figures don't tell the whole story. The numbers are the numbers, but there's lots of other things to have a look at. And that ties into my second point that a site visit will tell you more than what the numbers ever will. You need to see what's actually going on and have an idea as to why people aren't going there if they're not going there. Why are people going there? What are the risks of them not going there? So you need to do that. Buy what you know and back yourself to improve it. So if you've never compounded before in your life, you probably don't want to be buying a compounding pharmacy that pops up on the website. Um, if you've never looked after a nursing home, you don't want to buy something that's got 1,000 aged care beds unless you really do your homework on it. But if you're a good operator, back yourself in to be able to improve what's been going on there. Um, if you're an inexperienced pharmacy owner or want to be a potential owner, start the relationship building now. Like reach out to Will, let him know that you're actually wanting to buy a pharmacy. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and if he knows what you're on the lookout for, he'll be able to give you first touch on it when one comes across the desk. Um, AP do an indicative lending. Do you guys still do
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty valuable for first time buyers. Our finance team can do what's called a borrowing capacity assessment.
Mm.
So we just take a look at your circumstances and the savings you might have or equity, and then we can do an assessment of what sort of budget you have for pharmacy purchases, how much you're likely to get from the bank for different stores, and and they can take you a little bit through some of the basics of how pharmacy lending works as well. So yeah, certainly a valuable thing to do for inexperienced or first-time buyers. Um,
And
so
my last point, Will probably won't like this, but not every pharmacy is going to be right for you, and that's okay. Don't be too disheartened if you miss out on something. There'll often be something coming along very, very soon. So yeah.
yeah, I think that's fair enough, even though it goes against my broker instincts. All right. So all this knowledge that you've gained over the years, Simon, you're doing something with it at the moment with Change Pharma. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it came about?
Yeah. So after I finished sort of owner operating, I went did my MBA, did some work with a couple of groups, a couple of corporates, and was just the MBA sort of solidified change management for me, and what the wider corporate community does versus what pharmacy does is like wildly different. And when 60-day dispensing came in, and having these changes foisted upon us on a regular basis, I decided that I'd go with an operational based with a change management twist consulting service, which has done pretty well for me so far.
Great. What are some of the things that you often help your clients with, your pharmacy owners?
So a lot of accountability based aspects. So they want for so a smaller operator, they might have one or two stores. They just want to know that when they're not in the store, that things are running as if they are in there. So building accountability frameworks, making sure that the team know what's expected of them, make sure the team are performing to that level, and just basically having that put in place. I've also worked with a larger regional group in Victoria. They were getting close to the brink when I first started helping them out. They had some structural wrongs that needed to be righted in terms of the level of stock they were holding, some wage issues, and basically output of teams as well. So did a bit of that work with them, and 14 months after that, they bought a sixth pharmacy. So the turnaround came quite well from there. So yeah.
Sounds like you did quite a lot of good work with them if they turned it around that quickly. So that's impressive. And it sounds like you can also help with lots of different shapes and sizes of pharmacies too, which is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Look, we could talk a lot more about Change Pharma, but we've got limited time today. So what I'll quickly do is just have a quick look at some of the Q&A questions that have come through. Um, so there's a question here, Simon, from Helene, and it's about compounding pharmacies. What would your thoughts be if you came across a listing that was compounding only? Would you be a bit concerned about that, or would you just look at it on its merits?
I've got limited um, exposure to compounding. I've seen a little bit of it in action, but I don't think I'd be putting up my money with my experience in a compounding pharmacy if I haven't had the exposure to it. If I'd worked for a compounder for a solid 12, 18 months and knew the ins and outs and what to look for,
Yeah.
I might give it a go. But I don't think I'd jump into that
Yeah, fair enough.
personally.
So it's
But
all about, yeah, what your background is and
yeah, look,
how comfortable you are with it. Yeah.
yeah, do what you know.
Yeah. From my perspective as a broker, they're valued in a pretty similar way. So you just still need to look at all the same aspects that we covered earlier. Look at the profitability, where the customers are coming from, the lease, etc. All of that stuff still applies. And then, yeah, it's whether you have the skills to compound and then carry on that business and hopefully grow it and what your plan would be for the
Yeah,
growth. They're valued in a very similar way. So,
yeah, and growing it is the key. If you have to spend the first 2 years of the business trying to bed down and understand it, you haven't really got time to then market it. So you've got to make sure you've got that delicate balance.
yeah. There's another, we'll just do one more question. I'm sorry, guys. We're a bit short on time, but one more question is about purchasing a pharmacy interstate and the challenges with staff. How have you found that running a store from a different state?
Well, I've got a business partner who runs that, so I help with some of the strategic stuff and some of the backroom stuff. But for the most part, he runs it, and we talk on the regular about what that looks like. I do my Pharmacy Council of New South Wales requirements, of course, so I've got access to the books, so I check things on the regular. But again, it's having someone in there that you can trust, so
Yeah.
that you know exactly what's going on. So you need to know that there's no such thing as just being an investor pharmacist. You actually have to know what's going on in your store at all times. So it's very important that you're across that.
Yeah. So if you're not going to be an owner operator yourself, you either want a working partner in there who's managing the store or a really good manager.
Yep.
But yeah, the more involved you can be on a personal level, the better, generally speaking.
Hmm. Yep.
All right, sorry guys, there's quite a few questions. What we'll do is for the questions that we didn't get to, I'll get in touch with you, or potentially Simon if it relates more to Simon. But one of us will touch base with you in the next few days to get back to your questions. Sorry that we didn't have time to get to everybody. So yeah, that brings us to an end. Thanks very much, Simon, for joining us. That was super insightful, and we really appreciate you coming along.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Will. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As I said, we'll get back to the questions that we didn't get to. You'll get an email later today with a recording of the webinar and a survey that we'd love you to fill out. We've also got more resources on our website and on our YouTube channel, so check those out. Thanks again for joining and have a great day.